Welcome to Tansson TV Plus. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Mom.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yep, thank you for joining again.
Yeah, we always love doing this. And Mom, how are you doing today?
I am doing fine, Brandon. Thank you so much for asking. How are you doing?
Always well here. Well, we have another episode of The Connors to tackle.
We do. Episode number 3 before the season finale.
Yes. Can you believe that there's only 3 episodes left of the series?
I know, so hard to believe.
But yes, this episode here is titled, Mom, do you have the title?
I do. It's called Application, Accusation, and a Man Bag.
Yeah, I'm quite excited for us to get into it from April 9th, 2025. And Mom, if you're able to go ahead and kick us off.
I sure will. And I will say that we're recording this on April the 10th of 2025. And basically, there are 3 things going on in this particular episode. First, Jackie decides that she wants to go back on the police force. The girls and Dan talk about Roseanne's journey with her opioids, and then Darlene discovers that Mark has an expensive bag that he's bought recently, and that, in essence, is this episode.
Well, Mom, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome, Brandon.
Yeah, and overall, I did want to start off by asking. So, we discussed a bit in the previous episode discussion about the titles of these episodes and how they sort of reflect the plot. And so, how is it now going into episodes, sort of knowing the sort of 3 layered tiers that these episodes do?
Well, Brandon, we watch the Connors and then Roseanne for years, and it just never hit me how many plots that they had in the episodes. And so, even now, as I'm watching some reruns and then I'm watching the current ones, I'm looking at the plots and seeing how many that they do have. And we've kind of discovered that there are 3, or at least within the last few that we've seen, that there are 3 distinct plots, at minimum 3 distinct plots in these episodes. And so to have one that's about Jackie for this one, and then of course Dan and the girls, and then Mark, is really kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, it really is. And I definitely did want to start off with that applications aspect of it and sort of go in order a little bit. And this is going to be a pretty brief discussion. But for applications, we did see that Jackie has officially applied for the police force. And we see Neville back.
Yeah, Neville's returned. And what is something funny that I noticed is that, and I wrote this down, that it only took 8 minutes in before all 3 of these were actually initially discussed. But yes, Jackie has decided she wants to be on the police force again. She has said that they are taking retirees back, and she not only wants to be on the police force not just by a desk job, she actually wants to go back in the field. And Neville was not quite happy about that initially, but at the end he seemed to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, Jackie, she's going to do it anyway, so, well, might as well be supportive, I guess.
Yes, and that's what the rest of the family seems to think too.
Yeah, and as a side note, we were speaking a bit about Neville, if whether or not he would show up during our previous discussion, but I feel like his role was actually needed within this episode.
Yeah, it really was needed in this episode. Like I said, I really didn't pay attention to Neville before, so I kind of made it a point to pay attention to him for this particular episode, and so I'm glad I did, and I like his interaction with Jackie.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy their interaction and their camaraderie, especially given that that Neville, especially in this case, he's always been supportive but also hesitant because he knows Jackie. He knows that she's going to get overboard, and actually, I think the surprising part with the application side of things is that they didn't show any sort of flashback footage to when Jackie was a police officer before, just because they did that. They used the flashbacks in the promos for the episode, but not in the episode itself.
Yeah, and they had quite a bit they could have that they could have really showed with Jackie being on the force.
Yeah, so I definitely thought that was quite interesting. But I thought it was well done. And we did get a slight life update from Neville in the sense that he has a new job now.
Yes, he does. Brandon, will you let the audience know what he does now?
Yes, in addition to having his veterinary clinic, he also works at a zoo as as official veterinarian of, I don't remember which animal it was, but Nevertheless, he gets a really cool jacket as part of his job.
Yes, he does. He does. And then Brandon, our second one is accusation.
Yeah, and we got into this one quite quickly as well.
We sure did. We sure did. And in this one, Dan is actually speaking to his girls, trying to kind of pin down the journey of with Roseanne and the drugs that she was taking.
Yeah. And even before they got into the word accusations, like as soon as we were saying, okay, well, that was the application for Jackie, yeah, check off the list. And then right into it, we'd go straight into, yeah, Dan, Liza and his girls speaking about, their mother. And so it definitely was a interesting and deep storyline, but one that, like, I feel like was executed really well.
Yeah, they did. They did a nice job explaining it, and because I did get a kick out of Darlene because she was able to give some exact dates on things that I thought was kind of, funny that she was able to do that.
Yeah, I feel like this show and the preceding show have always done a good job at blending heart-filled emotions with comedy and blend and walking that line. And I think this episode continued on that tradition.
I do too, Brandon. I do too.
And yeah, and so and I liking that they're not sort of lingering where the previous episode left off, like in regard to like the lawyer and everything. That we seem to be a lot further into the case.
Yep, it is. It is, and you're right. I am liking that they are moving this storyline along.
Yeah, but it really led naturally into the third storyline of the episode, and a man bag.
Yes, Darlene was speaking to Mark, and she was kind of helping him put things in his backpack. And when she pulled out the man bag or his extra item in which he's holding things inside. And when she pulled it out, she saw how much it really cost. The price was another, but she knew by the name brand that he had bought an expensive man bag. And so, which made her question at least the job that he had. And then Mark just kind of came clean and said and mentioned that he was a computer hacker and he was doing this in order to go to college.
Yeah, which I thought it was quite interesting in the way that they laid it out because Darlene definitely seemed very suspicious, but I was trying to figure out like when did she start catching on? But apparently she hadn't really. She was just worried because he was out at all hours.
Yeah, she really hadn't caught on. And another interesting thing is she didn't say anything about Jackie and the fact that Jackie knew. I was expecting her to come back later and say, to actually have a word with Jackie, since she didn't tell her. But no, she was just more concerned, of course, about her son and what he was doing.
Yeah, and I definitely felt at least up until about like the last minute and a half of their argument between Darlene and Mark. I was thinking, wow, like compared to some of the like season one arguments that that Darlene would have at that point, largely with Harris. That's like, wow, she'd actually matured a bit in how she handles things up until she mentioned the whole like or you can leave the house. I mean, there was a whole 2-season arc of Harris leaving the house, and apparently Darlene has not learned from that.
Yeah, she kicked him out real quick. But I think in this instance, she didn't mean it.
Oh yeah,
She just kind of said it.
yeah, and we do at least get some sort of urgency with it. With I suppose a day later, Darlene is concerned that Mark hasn't returned, and so hopefully, all is well on that front. But as Dan says, that's just what people do at that age.
Yeah, and I thought something else that we talked about off camera was we talked about how Harris and Mark are not in the same episode, and so, or at least for the last three episodes, they have not been in the same episode together.
Yeah, which I think is definitely interesting. I mean, I personally would have thought that, of course, the roles may be different episode to episode, but I would have thought for only 6 episodes being left of the series that utilize all the characters as much as we can. But yeah, so we've had episode 1, Harris is missing. Episode 2, Mark is missing, and now Mark is back, Harris is gone.
Yeah, and then Ben is also still MIA.
Yeah, as is Louise.
Yes.
And it makes me wonder too, for these final three episodes, I guess the half the season left, as crazy as it is, if there's going to be any more occurrences like this where everyone's missing, or if they're going to try to have at least for the final two episodes, since that will air within an hour time span, if they're going to at the very least put all the characters in those episodes. I would hope, or at least the last one.
I know. I really hope they do. At least for the last one, I hope that they do bring them all together so we can have some sort of closure.
But yeah, but overall, I thought that this episode, at least in my opinion, you can definitely feel free to let us know yours, but I feel like out of the season 7 episodes thus far, this is the strongest one they've had.
No, actually, I agree with that. I think this is the strongest one too. Like I said, I've tried to rank these between 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. I actually gave this one a B, which is a 4, and because I thought it held its own, and there was enough to make me giggle in the episode, and so I thought it held its own pretty well.
Yeah, I absolutely would agree. I feel like this one fits solidly within that 4 space. Not that there was anything per se wrong with the previous two episodes in a sense, but I feel like I didn't feel like I got real closure with them. It just felt like, oh, the series is ending. Whereas this one feels a bit more in line with the past couple seasons, where it's just, you know, it does what the show does what it does.
Yeah, and then I like the very last scene, the outro of the episode, because we have Neville and Becky speaking, and Becky makes a comment like, "Oh, we've never spoken together," and I thought that was interesting because, like I said, I didn't pay attention to Neville, so the fact that they are mentioning that Neville and Becky are two characters who have probably have been in scenes together but have not interacted, I thought that was interesting, and yeah, I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. And you know, because this is such an ensemble show, there are so many characters, and clearly not enough that can fit all in one episode. But
Yeah,
I like that they gave that sort of acknowledgement, and we're able to see a scene with them, even if it's sort of played for jokes in traditional Connors fashion.
yeah. All right, Brandon, what are you looking forward to for the next episode coming up, or what do you hope is actually addressed?
Yeah, so I'm gonna first go into sort of my overall hopes, and then I kind of want to do a very brief dissection of sort of the title of that one to see if we can get anything right with our predictions.
Okay.
Um, but overall, without looking at the title, I'm hoping that we are beginning to get sort of a closure with the Mark storyline, just because I think that is the one with the most implications, and I hope that Ben returns. Those are the two big things that I want to to see, because I feel like the show cannot end before some resolution, hopefully a good one, is given between Darlene and Ben, especially given all that they've went through this whole series. I mean, it's really been about their journey in part, one of the many storylines. And then for Mark, because we've kind of set him up from Roseanne season 10 to now, and I'd like to see what this has to do going into his future.
Yeah, actually, same here. And Brandon, I totally agree with everything you've said so far.
Yeah, and something that I do hope just overall, not necessarily for just next episode, is that I like that, for the episodes that we've seen Louise in, that she's been getting progression, over these years and seasons. But one plot line that we sort of lost in the midst of last season was that she had won a school board seat, and then we never really saw anything of it. So whereas I don't feel like the show really needs to dedicate like an episode to it because we don't have the time for that. I would at least like some acknowledgement that she's in her position.
Yeah, that would be nice too. That would be nice too. I completely agree with everything you've said.
Yeah, and the episode for next week, the title is Danny Boy, the interview, the new hire, and the hanging Chad.
Oh, we've got four different plot points. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to predict, and so I'm guessing the interview has to do with Jackie. The hanging Chad has to do with Darlene's extra boyfriend. I don't know, whatever he is. His new friend, her new friend. And what were the other two?
So the other two are Danny Boy and the new hire.
Huh. Good question. I don't know about the other 2.
Yeah, for me, I'm trying to think. Danny Boy, maybe Dan. is up to something, or maybe he's sort of contemplating his future. I'm not 100% sure as to what it will entail for Dan, other than that I presume it's probably about Dan. In terms of the new hire, I don't know because I don't know because I agree that I think the interview part is about Jackie, or maybe she's the new hire. I'm not sure. So I don't know. Maybe the four main people get a spotlight. I don't know.
Or maybe the interview has to do with Roseanne and her drug use.
Hmm,
Interviewed by someone, and then the new hire really is Jackie.
that would make sense. Well, I guess we'll have to tune in next week to see if we were right about any of our guesses.
Yeah, and everyone who's watching, please put in the comments. Let us know what your guesses are.
Yeah, and to think after next week, we're just going to have one more discussion after that for the final two.
Yes, yes. So hard to believe.
But yeah, but we want to thank you so much for tuning in to our discussion for the Connors number 3 of the season.
Yep, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Have a wonderful day.
All right, bye, everybody.